now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. I recently read the resignation letter of former New York Times reporter Bari Weiss, and if what she's saying is true, it's quite troubling for the state of the press here in the United States of America. Now, as a publisher, I read this letter and it really gave me pause, because if a reporter cannot report the truth at a newspaper, then America is in a very dangerous place. Now, according to our United States Constitution, we are supposed to have the right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And that freedom of the press that was established in the First Amendment was designed so that journalists could have some protection from the government, from being punished for reporting stories that would make the government uncomfortable or report facts that would present the government in an unflattering light. And what's really troubling about what Bari Weiss talked about in her resignation letter is that our journalistic system on the media side has been compromised, and because our journalistic system on the media side has been compromised, we're not getting any sort of freedom of the press from these media owners, and these media owners are creating an environment where we're not able to get the facts presented to us. Now, any good journalist knows that a good reporter is objective, and a good reporter wants to report on the facts in an objective fashion so that the reader can get the information necessary to make their own observations and draw their own conclusions. That's part of my own writing style, and one of the reasons why I use revolving first person in many of my books is because I want the reader to make their own observations and draw their own conclusions, because I want the reader to be able to get the big picture as related to the story. And that's something that I'm not seeing when I go out here and I watch numerous news outlets like CNN or ABC News these days, and it's practically confirmed in Bari Weiss's resignation letter as to why she's leaving the New York Times. And again, this is a very precarious situation for journalism to be in here in the United States of America, because again, our Constitution guarantees us freedom of the press, and if people in the press aren't comfortable about having the freedom to go out here and get the stories that they want to report, because there's a hostile environment in a newspaper, a new TV newsroom, or any sort of media outlet, then we're not going to be able to get the news as related to important critical events. And that puts the public at risk, because if we cannot get clear, objective reporting from journalists, then what's going to happen is we're not going to know the truth about what's going on here in our country. And this is quite scary, because we have many of the reporters at the New York Times and many other media outlets going out here and looking to only report stories that appeal to the far left. And according to Bari Weiss, the entire New York Times newsroom was more looking to appeal to people on Twitter than go out here and report the news to we the people. And that's just not what a good reporter does. That's something that people would do before the revolution, because back before the revolution here in the United States, we had a lot of places looking to only appeal to the king and report news that was flattering to the king. But in 2020, we have a new king, and that king is King Woke. And King Woke wants to report news that is only flattering to the Twitter mob on social media and wants to try to give the mob the news that sates the mob's emotions. And that's not news from any sort of journalistic standard. From a journalistic standard, any news that is only meant to sate the emotions of a few is nothing more than propaganda, and because propaganda is a form of media that only tells the reader or the viewer what they want to hear, and it's only made to make that person feel good. And our journalistic system has been in a very bad state since the 2016 election, and instead of us getting objective reports that report the news of what's transpiring here in America, what we've been getting is a nonstop avalanche of propaganda meant to demonize President Donald Trump. Now, I am not a Donald Trump supporter, and I do not believe Donald Trump is qualified to be the president of the United States. But I can accept the election results because those election results were the ones voted by we the people. Unfortunately, many in the media cannot accept those results, and many of the owners of the media, due to the Telecommunications Bill of 1996, they can't accept these results, and because they control most of the media, 4 to 6 corporations cannot accept those results. They want to give us a news media that is completely slanted and practically presents non-stop Donald Trump bashing, and this propaganda is really doing damage to the framework of our First Amendment and doing damage to the press here in America. Because our press was supposed to be all about being open and free so that we can get a diversity of thought, and the different viewpoints presented by journalists were supposed to be the ones that allowed us to draw our own observations and conclusions regarding the facts. Unfortunately, after the 2016 election, it seems like many people have forgotten what journalism was all about. And because they've forgotten what journalism is all about, they, want to turn a newspaper like the New York Times, I have gas sometimes, and it leads to me having these things when I'm talking. But that what happens is that our journalistic standards wind up declining because instead of news outlets looking to report facts, we get news outlets looking to present us opinions of media owners as facts, and even worse, we get news media outlets controlled by woke types looking to present their opinions as facts and looking to use newspapers like the New York Times, which is supposed to be the newspaper as official record, as making opinions the official record everybody is supposed to believe. But a real journalist is not about trying to make an opinion the official record. No, a journalist wants to go out here and present you a story so that you can draw your own conclusions or get an understanding of a situation that may be potentially dangerous. Because what's going on in the New York Times editorial room and many other news media outlets like CNN is guaranteed to ensure that we will never, ever see another Woodward and Bernstein emerge and reveal a potentially devastating story like Watergate, because the newsroom environment is not one that is supportive of objective journalists. I mean, today's news media outlets no longer support objective journalism, whether, again, it be the editorial offices of the New York Times or the Washington Post or these TV media news outlets like CNN, there's no objectivity in the editorial room to give reporters the support that they need to report stories that may be unflattering of a media owner or unflattering of a politician or a group of politicians that this business is supporting. And again, that compromises the journalistic principles that were established in the First Amendment. And it's, again, another one of those reasons why I believe we need to repeal the Telecommunications Bill of 1996, because the Telecommunications Bill of 96 helps foster this environment that allows these woke journalists to believe that they have a safe space, and that this safe space where they can express only one set of viewpoints is perfectly fine. Because in America, we're supposed to have different viewpoints, we're supposed to have diversity of thought, and an individual is supposed to be able to look at different sets of information and be able to make their own observations and conclusions. But it's hard to do that in a news media platforms and a series of news media platforms that are all about creating propaganda to appeal to the mob and persuade and sate the mob's emotional needs and give the mob a reason to feel, but not give them a reason to think. And good reporters and good journalists, they want you to think, and they want you to think critically about the facts presented to you so that you can take action in your life to maintain your quality of life or deal with people who want to do damage to your quality of life. That's what a good journalist wants to do. A good journalist does not want to dig up dirt to smear an individual like a Donald Trump. No, a good journalist wants to present facts about Donald Trump so that people can draw their own conclusions about this man and draw their own conclusions regarding him. And we're not seeing that in this culture of woke. And your Bari Weiss sees how far we have fallen off, because Bari Weiss is a left reporter, and she can see how far things have gone to the extreme. And as a publisher myself, I have seen how far things have gone to the extreme. And this extremism is the kind of stuff that is the foundation of a propaganda platform like one in communist China and other communist countries, where all we hear is the news that the leaders want us to hear and not the facts as related to important and critical stories like what we have now going on with COVID-19. And that's a dangerous, again, place for people to be when all we get is propaganda and reports based on emotion. Because when we get reports based on emotion and not the facts, then people cannot make good choices or critical choices that may possibly save their lives. Because when I look at the completely inconsistent journalism that has gone on as related to COVID-19, as related to many of these woke types being here and only reporting their opinions and then mixing their own emotional opinions regarding Donald Trump in the news, it is preventing us from getting a clear, objective information regarding how people can protect themselves from this deadly disease or find ways to be able to deal with this virus in a constructive fashion. And I believe a lot of the fear that has been out here has been exacerbated by many of these woke reporters who are looking to weaponize the news media against, and the virus and the reports of the virus against Donald Trump, instead of trying to report the news objectively regarding this virus. And this is not, again, a good place for our news media to be in, because if we cannot get the facts as related to both sides of the story, then the American people are much less safer than just like they were back in the days before the Constitution, when King George was only allowing newspapers to report stories that were only flattering to the king. So most of the people in the culture of woke don't see how they're taking the country back to the days before the American Revolution with their slanted journalism, and they don't see how their slanted journalism is doing damage to we the people, because if we the people don't get the facts regarding a story, then how can we draw conclusions that allow us to take action? I mean, if your news reporters are so caught up in their emotions about Donald Trump, then they should not be reporting. And it's a sad day when a objective reporter like Bari Weiss feels that they have to quit their job because they don't have the support of an editorial department, but woke types who want to report slanted propaganda get the support of editorial, because that shows us how far we have become lost here in America as related to our press. Because again, when you have an objective journalist walking away from the #1 newspaper in the United States and many other countries and leaving because that she believes she cannot report objectively, and she went out here and spoke against something that is as destructive to freedom of the speech and freedom of the press, like the letter she signed as denouncing cancel culture. It shows how many of our media institutions have gone far off the rails and are have gone completely off kilter, because again, freedom of the press is an important part of America, and if people don't feel safe about reporting the news and reporting the facts to we the people, then we the people are in a place where we're not going to get the truth, and if we don't get the truth, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble, because that means we're headed down a really dark road, and that dark road may take us down the road to fascism and communism. If you'd like to try some of my positive publications on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the Spinsterella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com, where you can pick up those publications in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today.